Hey, welcome back to yet another episode on the LS Bronco 2 project here. I'm going to start working on the front power steering cooling system. The Hydroboost still isn't here yet. It won't be here probably earliest first, second week of May. No big deal. The cooling is all on the low pressure side anyway. So I'm going to start getting that stuff plumbed. I'm going to do basically an identical copy of what I did on my Explorer. I'm going to run all AN-6 fittings, twist lock hose. I'm going to be running a 17-inch log style cooler. This is a dual pass in and out on the same side, and it's 17-inch. I just started putting the cooler here together. It's from Durelli. It's a 17-inch, like I said. It's basically a 3-inch, and it's finned inside and out. And this one is a dual pass, in and then out. Comes with the mounting hardware, the little legs and stuff. These are 3/8 MPT to -6AN fittings. I just got them hand tight for now. I'll go back and Teflon tape, thread seal it. Low pressure side of the steering gear is a 5/8 by 18 inverted flare. So this will go into the steering gear low pressure port, giving us converting to 6AN. And then I have a combination of fittings. Got Russell 90s, and then the Russell straights and 45s. For some reason, I want to be here till May, so I'm using the Evil Energy version. Like I said, the quality's been just as good as the Russell so far. So I got 3 45s, 3 straights, 3 90s, and then I have a T. So basically what's going to happen here is the what do you call it? The fluid's going to come from the steering gear, which is at the hottest point, out of the steering gear, into the cooler, through the cooler, out of the cooler, and then basically it's going to go to this T. The T is going to be inline, so straight to the reservoir on the power steering pump. Now the T off side is going to go to the reservoir side of the future Hydroboost. So the Hydroboost, steering gear, ram assist all runs off the same pump, same fluid, and that's how you got to connect it. So let's get going here. All right, so we're underneath my Explorer. So that's my cooler right here. It's also a Durelli. Just happens to be black, not polished. So the Ford Explorers already have a, I don't know what if you want to call it, a subframe or whatever this is. There's a plate already on these Explorers, and that made it really easy for me to mount the cooler to. So the Bronco 2s do not have this, so I'm gonna fab up a piece of, I think, angle iron, weld it side to side, make a plate, and then start mocking it up. All right, so I had a long stick of this 3/16 angle iron. It's 2.5 3x3 or whatever it is. Anyway, that was some stock that I had laying around, so I took a piece, cut it to width for the frame rails, and you see how the cooler just fits on top of that perfectly. And then I cut off, I left about a 1/2 inch or so rib just for strength. This will be welded up underneath the frame rails like so, and then the cooler will sit right on top, and there's enough clearance between that and anything else, especially the fan. It'll be just forward of the fan, so I'll show you how that looks here in a sec. I found half of this, and then I measured the halfway mark, center of the bracket holes to holes, measured out that half. That way I can center this on this bracket. I'm gonna mark the holes, get those holes drilled ahead of time. It'd be easier to drill them now than to drill it while it's up on the welded in place. And that's what it looks like. It's all welded in. All corners and edges are all welded. All right, I took the blowgun and blew this stuff out before I installed the fittings. There was a little bit of dust inside. So some pipe thread, or pipe, what do you call it? Thread sealant. Ready to go. Those are torqued in. Moving on. So I core sealed, primed, and painted the bar I welded in. That's already dry. Just mounted the cooler with some stainless 1/4 bolts. And now what I'm doing is I'm starting to lay out the fittings to see what works best. I already installed the 5/8 by 18 flared adapter fitting in the steering gear, and I got a 45 AN -6 coming off. So I like how that's looking so far. Where the cooler's at, 90s kind of put the hose, straight up and down, obviously. So I'm gonna do 45s, and then the hose will have a little bit of flex. That should work out fine. And then I'm messing around with the T. So basically what's going on here, it's gonna come out of the low pressure port of the steering gear. That's when the fluid is at its hottest. And I'm gonna have it come in the forward front facing, the front side of the truck port, because that'll get the air first. So the hottest will be in front, and then it'll come loop from the back out. Out from that 45 to, looks like I'm gonna use a 90. Let's see if I can hold this right. And this is basically gonna be like a short 3-inch piece of hose connecting the reservoir port to the rest of the setup. 45 angles it out nice, and then the 90 drops it down to the back port of the cooler. And then the T has the middle port, which will be attached to the future Hydroboost. And I'm assuming that's probably going to be a 45 to angle the hose out towards the firewall. Let me get some of this stuff going. So I've shown this in one of my early videos. Myself, Brad with Riding Shotgun Adventures, and John with Broncos R Us. We went in 3 ways on this tool. This allows you to put these the twist lock hose on the fittings super easy. You can do everything from, let's see, 10 and 10, 8, 6, and 4 are the 4 sizes it can do. Just put the hose in here, and I'll show you how this works in a sec. All right, so of course I can't find my tripod. And one thing I did notice is with the Evil Energy brand fittings, they don't fit this Russell tool how the Russell fittings do, which I guess I understand. It still works, it's just not as easy of a tight fit. So I don't know if I'll be able to do this one hand. Let me see if I can get it started. There she goes. I mean, it's just so easy with this tool. Bomb it out, and you're done. Now, back in the day when I first started doing this stuff, I tried doing it by hand, putting the fittings in a vise and trying to push them on. What a joke. I mean, at the time we bought this, I think it was like 160 bucks. But to be able to put a fitting on in like less than 3 seconds versus struggling for a half hour per fitting without the tool, well worth the tool. Cost of the tool, I mean. All right, the power steering cooler cooling lines, low pressure side is 100% done. So again, everything is 6AN size, equivalent to a 3/8 hose. Combination of 45-degree fittings and 190, it looks like, yeah. So like I said, Russell Performance, you'll find any fitting you possibly could need for whatever. Fuel lines, brake lines, power steering, you name it, they got it. So some of it's not cheap, but if you want to have a factory fit, factory look, and serviceable setup, it's going to take a couple extra dollars to do so, rather than just putting hose on with some worm hose clamps. This right here, you know, is going to fit. It's going to look nice. It's way better quality. Anyway, so it's a pretty short hose setup. I try to make it as short and sweet as possible. Less hose to worry about, less hose to route. So out of the steering gear to a 45 to the hose. And then since out of the steering gear is the hottest fluid, that's going to come in the front port, front of the truck, so the air is hitting the front of this cooler. So hopefully that would make more sense to cool the hot stuff first. Goes in, goes back out to a 45, short hose, and then it just made sense to go to a 90 into the T, and then the T shoots to a 45, and then a short hose to the reservoir nipple on the steering pump. And then again, the T is in the middle here. The top port will eventually connect to the Hydroboost when that gets here. It shares the flow of the reservoir low pressure stuff. And you'll notice I went ahead and added some little band clamp things. Really the only spot necessary would be on the nipple side here with the hose pushed over. But why not just put them on all of them if you got them, right? Before you clamp them though, you can still clock these fittings. The fittings will swivel once they're pushed on. So I went ahead and clocked everything to make the hose in its most neutral form. And then in that position, I then band clamped everything. So. All right, so that wraps up the power steering cooler install on the LS Bronco 2 swap. Not a super hard project. Obviously, I've done this stuff multiple times now, so I can kind of pre-plan in my head how I want to route stuff. I do buy, 3 or 4 extra 45s, 3 or 4 extra straights and 90s. Because sometimes when you start routing stuff, a 90 might be better than a 45, or a 45 might be better than a 90. You don't know 100% until you start laying them out. But it's just nice to have extra options. That we can do the best quality job the first time while you're doing it. So again, all Russell parts and some. Well, not all Russell. I mean, I guess all the 45s were Evil Energy. And actually the T was too. The 90 was Russell, and the 5/8 18 flare adapter for the steering gear was Russell. Regardless, it's, to me, equivalent stuff. The Russell tool does work perfectly matched with the Russell fittings. Just the way the fitting part the part of the fitting that goes in the tool, the little block, obviously the Russell just fits perfect because it's made for it. The Evil Energy still works. It's just not as good, but it doesn't make any difference. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're not subscribed, please do. I really do appreciate it. Last week I hit I hit 1,000, and I'm over 1,000 now. So appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Follow me on the Facebook page, Instagram. And like always, there's more to come, so stay tuned.